O Lord, how many are my foes? Many are rising against me. Many are saying of my soul, there is no salvation for him in God. But you, O Lord, are a shield about me, my glory and the lifter of my head. I cried aloud to the Lord, and he answered me from his holy hill. I lay down and slept. I woke again, for the Lord sustained me. I will not be afraid of many thousands of people who have set themselves against me all around. Arise, O Lord, save me, my God. For you strike all my enemies on the cheek. You break the teeth of the wicked. Salvation belongs to the Lord. Your blessing be on your people. Okay, so today's Devo is actually based off of Psalm 3. And why did I choose this psalm? Because this is the psalm that David wrote while he was running away from his son Absalom. And if you were there on Sunday, this is what we discussed. We discussed how Absalom had actually turned his back on his dad David and decided to try and take the kingdom away from him. And during this time, David was going through all sorts of different emotions. As you can probably, honestly, we probably wouldn't even be able to imagine what he was going through. He must have been angry, sad, depressed, feeling all sorts of different ways. And what does he do? Well, a lot of times as Christians, we think that when we have feelings, what we should do is act like they're not there, or we're tempted to bottle them up and stash them away somewhere and then deal with them elsewhere. But that is not what David does here. That's actually not what David does in almost any of his Psalms. Instead, he is straight up and honest with God. He goes up to God, and the first thing we see him do in this Psalm is say, God, look at what's going on. Look at what I'm dealing with. There are so many people against me. They're saying this, they're saying that. They're after me, God. Where are you? And you can tell that he is going through a hardship right now in this time. And so if you're in that stage, if you're going through any kind of emotions, if you're feeling some sort of fear or sorrow or pain or suffering, or maybe you're just worried about the future, I encourage you to do what David did in this psalm. Start out and pray to God. Pray your feelings to God. We are not called to store our emotions away, but instead we should do what David did, which is when we find ourselves caught up in circumstances or situations, take those circumstances, those situations, and our feelings and take them straight to God and let him know what's going on. David continues on, and after he tells God what's going on in his heart and because of the circumstance he's in, he goes on and also reminds himself. I love that it continues in verse 3. The first word he says, after he explains what's going on, he says, but you, O Lord, are a shield about me. He says, God, you are my shield. You are not just a shield that I can pick up and I have to do all the work. No, you're a shield that surrounds me. He starts to remind himself of who God is and remind himself that God is there for him, that he's got his back, and that God will protect him regardless of what's going on. He says, you are a shield around me, meaning that God is not just protecting one part of his life, one segment of him, one portion of him, but he's protecting all of him, protecting every single area, even in the back, like he's protecting all of him. He also reminds himself of what it means, of his relationship with God, what it means to him. He says, God, you are my glory and the lifter of my head. He reminds himself that his relationship with God is what defines him. God, you are my glory. You are my treasure. It's in you that I find my peace. It's in you where I lift up my head. Reminding myself of you places me where I need to be, helps me stand in the midst of all this. And that's what I encourage you to do. Remind yourself of who God is and what he's done for you, the promises that he has made to you. And in that, remind yourself of who you are. We are sons and daughters of the King. And so that means that the King is protecting us and we don't have to be afraid. So after you tell God what's going on and you express your feelings, remind yourself of who he is and of who you are and what you have because of your relationship with God. Because of that, you see that the rest of this psalm starts to change. His confidence level starts to rise. And that's why it's so important to remind yourself daily of what you have in your relationship with Christ, because it brings up your confidence and helps you stand tall, not with pride, but with the knowledge of who you are, so that you can come to the King and ask him what it is that you desire to ask him. In the book of James, it tells us that we can't come to the altar shy or thinking that God is going to push us away. But we must come to the altar knowing that God is going to receive us, and he's excited to hear from us and willing to address our matter. And that is what should happen. After you remind yourself of who you are, your confidence levels should rise up, and you should know that you can come to your Father and ask him for whatever it is that you need. Whether all that is that, hey God, I need lunch money for today and I'm broke, so hook me up. Or if it's something like, God, I'm feeling lonely right now, but you are always here with me. I'm asking you, let me feel your presence. And those are the steps that I just felt like today's devotional should require steps, should encourage you and remind you not just of who you are, but also that you can come to God about anything you're going through. And so my question for you this week is, what do you need to come to God about? Is there something going on in your life? Are you dealing with anger? Are you dealing with stress or worry or discouragement? Do you know who you are? Take all those matters to the cross and remind yourself, as David did in this psalm, of who you are and who you have behind your back taking care of you, and who's really in control. Guys, I love you, and I hope that this provides you the encouragement you need. I can't wait to see you guys later this week. Have a wonderful week.